Khateeb series in Human Anatomy and Physiology. Chapter 1. Episode 7. Serous membrane structure and function. Have you ever wondered how your heart beats tirelessly? Your lungs expand and contract. And your stomach and intestine move during digestion. All without creating painful friction inside your body? Well, the answer lies in a remarkable thin structure known as the serous membrane. In this video, we're going to explore what serous membranes are, how they're structured, what they do in our body, and the different types found in the body. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear understanding of how these thin, yet essential membranes help keep your internal organs functioning smoothly. So, what exactly are serous membranes? To answer this question, let's have the heart as our example here, and look at the membrane wrapping it, which is a serous membrane. Simply put, these serous membrane are thin and delicate tissues that line certain body cavities from one hand and cover the organs within them from the second hand. You can imagine this serous membrane as kind of like a protective wrap. Interestingly, what makes these membranes very special is that their unique structure. These membranes are composed of two layers. An inner layer that covers the organ and is called visceral layer, and another outer layer that lines the cavity and named the parietal layer. By this structure, these two membranes create a cavity in between, and release a slippery serous fluid to fill this cavity, to act as lubricant and reduce friction as the organ moves. To better understand this, imagine you have a balloon and you gently press your fist into it without popping it. Your hand represents an organ, like the heart or lungs. And the balloon represents a serous membrane which surround the organ. Look carefully at the image, and notice how the balloon wraps around your hand, creating two layers. The part of the balloon that's directly touching your hand is like the visceral layer of a serous membrane, that clings and covers the organ itself. The other outer part of the balloon, which is still intact and not touching your hand, represents the parietal layer, lining the body cavity. In between these two layers of the balloon, there's a thin space filled with a little bit of air. Just like how serous membranes have a small space filled with serous fluid. Now, let's talk about the different types of serous membranes. There are three major ones, each named according to the body cavity they're found in. These include the pleural around the lung, the pericardium surrounding the heart, and peritoneum protecting the abdominal organs. We have previously discussed these membranes briefly in the last episode of this series, and we're going to talk in more details here. Starting with the pleura. This serous membrane surrounds the lungs and lines the thoracic cavity. In this image, the pleura shows colored membrane that warps the lung inside the thoracic cavity. Magnifying this image shows two-layer pleura. An inner layer, that directly stuck and cover the lung, which is the visceral pleura, and an outer parietal pleura, that lines the chest wall. Between the visceral and parietal layers is the pleural cavity, that is filled with serous fluid. The pleura has many functions, including protecting the soft tissue of the lung, maintains a negative pressure that is required to keep lungs opened, and allowing the lung to expand and contract smoothly as you breathe. Now, let's move on to the pericardium, the protective covering that surrounds the muscular layer of the heart, known as the myocardium. This essential structure is composed of two main layers. The serous pericardium, which directly envelops the heart, and the fibrous pericardium, which provides external support and secures the heart to surrounding structures like the diaphragm and the great blood vessels. Taking a closer look, we can see that the serous pericardium lies between the myocardium and the fibrous pericardium. It consists of two delicate layers, an inner visceral layer and outer parietal layers. From this image, the inner layer, also known as the epicardium, adheres to the heart surface. On the other hand, the outer parietal layer lines the inside of the fibrous pericardium. Between these two layers lies the pericardial cavity, a space filled with serous fluid that acts as a lubricant to minimize friction as the heart beats. Now, what about the functions of the pericardium? In general, this membrane plays a vital role in protecting the heart from external forces, reducing friction during continuous contractions, and helping regulate its movement within the thoracic cavity. Additionally, it prevents excessive expansion of the heart chambers and ensures smooth interactions with surrounding structures, maintaining the heart's efficiency and stability. Take a look at the image provided. Here, we can see the peritoneum, which is the last serous membrane that lines the abdominal cavity and surrounds its organs. Notice the two distinct layers. The outer parietal peritoneum, which lines the inner abdominal wall, and the visceral peritoneum, which wraps around organs like the stomach, intestines, and liver. Between these layers, observe the peritoneal cavity that is filled with serous fluid that reduces friction and allows smooth organ movement. As you study the image, note how the peritoneum provides support, protection, and lubrication while also acting as a barrier against infection within the abdominal cavity.